Okay, this is Jeff Walker, and I am on the line with Peter Diamandis, who has a brand new book coming out. Actually, it's not even out yet, but I secured a pre-advanced copy here that I'm really excited about. This book is called Abundance, and the subtitle, which I absolutely love, is Why the Future Will Be Much Better Than You Think. So Peter has done, I think I'm going to ask him to introduce himself because he has done so much, but two of the things that I think he's most famous for is co-founding Singularity University and creating this X Prize phenomenon, which has already solved some amazing problems, technological problems in the world, and it is on pace to solve a whole bunch more. So, Peter, first of all, thank you very much for coming on with me.
My pleasure.
And, yeah, this is great. I'm just really excited about this. And can you just give a quick, basically quick introduction to yourself?
Sure. So I'm someone who's been passionate about opening the space frontier since my childhood, really turned on by Star Trek and Apollo, and spent a decade getting a medical degree and a bunch of engineering degrees to become an astronaut, and decided I wanted to do it myself privately. Built a few companies, a company called Zero G that takes people into weightless zero-gravity flights. We've flown Stephen Hawking there. A company called Space Adventures that is the only company to take people privately to the space station. We've taken 8 clients from Dennis Tito to Charles Simoni, who went twice to the space station for 10 days. And then started the X Prize and Singularity University really to try and fulfill my dreams of making this world an extraordinarily better place. The X Prize Foundation, we put up and designed large $10 million prizes to drive breakthroughs in different areas. Our first one was called the Ansari X Prize for teams to build a private spaceship that can carry 3 adults up into space. Incredibly, 26 teams from 7 countries spent $100 million to try and win this $10 million prize. And now we just launched the $10 million Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize, and we have the $30 million Google Lunar X Prize, and all you have to do is build a robot and land on the surface of the moon. I mean, so we're having fun with that. And then Singularity University, I co-founded with Ray Kurzweil. He's the chancellor, I'm the chairman, and we started a university where graduate students and executives can come and learn about all the exponentially growing technologies, AI, robotics, nanomaterials, synthetic biology, computers, networks, all of the fields that are growing, doubling year on year, that are allowing us to do what only governments and large corporations could do before. So someone following my dreams and along the way realized that the world is actually getting better at an extraordinary rate. So there comes the book Abundance.
So, I mean, we could talk. There's so much you have done, and in so many different areas, and clearly you're someone who thinks big. You're an entrepreneur, and which are two themes that I like to stress in my work and on my blog. But I think I know you've got a very busy day here, so I want to be respectful of your time and sort of focus on the book. So what you just said is the world is getting better, and which is something I truly believe in. But can you give me some examples?
Sure. The fact is that the world is getting better at an extraordinary rate, not just getting better, by almost every single measure. Over the last 50 years, poverty has been reduced more than in the past 500 years. Over the last century, the human lifespan has more than doubled. Average per capita income adjusted for time has tripled. The cost of food has come down 13-fold. The cost of electricity 100-fold. The cost of communications and information has really dropped, thousands of fold. If you think about the fact that a Maasai warrior in the middle of Africa today on a cell phone has better mobile communications than President Reagan did 25 years ago, and if they're on Google, they have access to more knowledge and information than President Clinton did 15 years ago. They're living in a world of information and communications abundance. I was just looking at some of the feeds I follow this morning, and this year, in 2012, the cost of solar energy has dropped to half of diesel-generated energy in India. And the cost of solar panels have dropped by 50% in 2011. We're living in an extraordinary time where we're literally on the verge of every man, woman, and child on planet Earth being able to have their basic needs met and exceeded. So that's what got me excited about writing Abundance.
You know, I live out in the mountains in Colorado, and I just went skiing a few days ago, and this isn't at a big resort. We just sort of went out in the woods. A friend of mine and I went skiing, and there's this place where we ski up, you know, for an hour. We get up to this beautiful viewpoint, and then we ski back down. And we skied up, and we got to the top there, and my friend pulled an orange out of his backpack just for us to share. And I was thinking that, you know, a couple hundred years ago, the richest king in the world, living in a climate like I live in, there is absolutely no possible way they could have an orange in the middle of the winter.
And it's true. It's you know, we forget how much the world has changed. All we do is pay attention to the negative news. You know, something that hit me in reading a friend's book, Rational Optimist, by Matt Ridley. You know, he points out that someone living under the poverty line in the United States today, really the most impoverished, poorest people in the United States, have access to a toilet, running water, a telephone, television, some of them air conditioning in cars. You know, these individuals have better access to these resources than the wealthiest robber barons or the kings and queens of, you know, the last century did. It's extraordinary.
So why don't people recognize this improvement?
Well, as it turns out, the human brain physiology over the last few 100,000 years really evolved to pay attention only to negative news. We have in our temporal lobes a small sliver called an amygdala that your eyes and your ears and all of your senses, rather than going to your cortex, the higher functions of the brain, go straight to the amygdala. And the amygdala is an early warning system. It was designed to warn you about imminent danger, and it's a survival technique. So, you know, a rustle in the leaves, you know, most of the time it's just the wind, but it gets your attention, and you think, is there a tiger in the bushes? And the problem is that the news media today take advantage of that. You've heard the old saying, if it bleeds, it leads. Well, the reason that we're fed literally 90% negative news, if you went and looked at the news at night or looked at your newspaper, it's all negative news because that's what captures your attention. And the problem is that the amygdala and your neurophysiological systems were developed in a time where the danger was one of an immediacy. You know, there's a snake on the ground, there's a tiger in the bush, but that's not what's fed to you on your TV and your cell phone and your Twitter feed. What you're getting today is all of these probabilistic, you know, there might be a terrorist attack, there may be an economic downturn, and your brain doesn't know how to tell the difference between something that has a probability and something that is real or something that's in your living room or something that's in other side of the planet. It gives equal credence to that because you don't get probability curves fed to you, and your brain emotionally doesn't respond to them. So you feel like you're constantly in a state of siege, and so you pay attention to all the negative news and give it far more credence than the positive news. And you might even know that you're doing that, but it's this emotional reaction you have to it. So even though the world is getting much better, we still feel like we're constantly living in worse times because that's the information that's fed to us on our day-to-day basis.
It's amazing. And I mean, you know, you can understand the news organizations. I haven't watched the news. Actually, I don't think I've ever watched it in my entire life. I certainly don't watch it now. But, you know, you can understand. They're competing. They have a business they're trying to run, and they're making money through advertisers, so they need more eyeballs, and they get those they compete for those eyeballs by competing, for the lowest common denominator that draws us in, the bad news. So
absolutely,
the deck is stacked against the good word getting out. I think there's an interesting piece of psychology as well, and this could be, I'm sure it's probably tied back to brain science, although I don't know that. But I've seen studies, and I haven't seen the original research, but I've seen it published in reputable places where your average person would rather make $25,000 if their neighbors were making $12,000, then they would rather than make $50,000 when their neighbors were making $100,000. So and if you look at, right now there's a great focus, or there's been a focus on sort of the wealth inequality throughout the world, both in the third world and also, in the industrialized world. But again, that's like people are not thinking about all the things we have that we didn't have 20 years ago, that even, the poor have right now that the wealthy didn't have 50 years ago.
Let me give you a great example. Today, I mentioned the notion of a Maasai warrior having better mobile and comm and information access than the presidents did, 15 to 25 years ago. Well, it turns out mobile telephony has been exponentially growing around the world, right? 2% in 2000, 28% in 2009, growing to over 70% by the end of 2013. So huge amount of capability there. Now think about the next thing, that this person in the middle of India or Pakistan or Africa on a smartphone has the ability to download or come standard with a smartphone, a GPS, an HD still camera, an HD video camera, a Game Boy, a library, literally a set of, even if they've got video conferencing capability with Skype, they have access to sets of tools and services that if you and I went back 20 years ago to try and buy all these things, we would have spent $1 million easily. But yet someone living on a few dollars a day who has a smartphone has access to that literally for free. We're in a transformational time, and it's that kind of capability, that democratized, extraordinarily powerful capability in the hands of billions of people on the planet, that is transforming it and leading us towards this world of abundance.
And so in your book, it ties directly into, let's celebrate. We're already in an abundant world, but you see this abundance increasing, I guess, probably exponentially going forward. And you talk about 4 forces that are really, that are driving this. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, happy to. So there are, when I stop to think about why is the world getting better and where is it going, myself and my co-author, Stephen Kotler, I should mention, who wrote this book with me, we identified 4 different areas that were driving this. The first and most important is exponentially growing technology. It's the sort of stuff that I teach at Singularity University in Silicon Valley. There are a set of fields that are literally doubling in price performance every year, and they're all sitting on top of Moore's Law. Now, we all know Moore's Law. It's the fact that when you go to Best Buy, your computer is twice as fast for the same price next year. The fact that we can pack more circuits per unit area in an IC chip. So we teach at SU, and the underpinnings for this exponential growing technologies are in computers, sensors, artificial intelligence, robotics, nanomaterials, digital medicine, synthetic biology, bioinformatics. All these fields are transforming and are causing this revolution. So the first force is exponential technologies. Cheaper, faster, more powerful. The second force is the DIY innovator, the do-it-yourself innovator who's passionate about an area and uses this exponential technologies to go and solve a problem. It's the notion that today this DIY innovator is able to do more than a large corporation or government could have done 10 or 20 years ago. And that's incredible. So one of my messages with the book is the idea of stop complaining about problems and start solving them, because you're empowered like you never have ever in the human history to go and do that. The third force is the technophilanthropist, the notion that more people are making more money younger in their lives than ever before. We have, thousands of billionaires on the planet, many of which earned their billions in their 20s and 30s. So they're living in a very socially conscious time, so rather than build buildings to their names, they're saying, I'm going to solve education issues or healthcare issues or eliminate malaria or TB or whatever the case might be. So these technophilanthropists are really driving us towards an age of abundance. And the fourth and perhaps the most important force is what I call the rising billion. Not the bottom billion, the rising billion. There are 3 billion new minds that are going to be joining the global Internet conversation over the next decade. So in 2010, we had 2 billion people on Earth connected to the Internet. By 2020, that number is going to grow to 5 billion. 3 billion new people are joining. What are they going to consume? What are they going to desire? What are they going to innovate and produce? It's an extraordinary time. Think about 3 billion new customers for you, Jeff, and the people who follow your work. But these 3 billion people are also going to figure out how to do solar power cheaper or healthcare cheaper, education in a better way. And we all get benefit from them because innovation in India or China can flow over the Internet to New York or L.A. just as quickly.
It is an extraordinary time. In fact, when we first met, a week or two ago, you mentioned not only all those people coming online that are connected, that they're creating knowledge, and they're creating wealth is what they're doing. When you look at the real definition of wealth.
I agree. I think these 3 billion people are going to be a huge economic dividend for the world. They're going to help us innovate and do. Ultimately, wealth is about what you can do in how much time, with what resources.
Absolutely.
And because the developing world has, less money, they are working on how do we do things cheaper. I mean, I'm blown away by the statistic that India has driven the production of solar to get a 50% price decrease in 2011. And they're on schedule to get 20 gigawatts of solar up and running in India within a decade. I mean, we all benefit from that.
Absolutely. Last time we didn't talk, you gave a presentation to this small group I was in. You talked about the power that we're going to have on our desktop, just in a $1,000 notebook computer, in just a few years. Could you just talk a little bit about that and how that ties in with the rising billion?
Sure. So, the laptop that you and I go and buy today is computing at about 10 to the 11th cycles per second, 100 billion calculations per second, 100 gigahertz machine. Moore's law has been pretty constant in projecting that computers are getting twice as fast every 12 to 24 months for the same dollars. So if you project that forward, it turns out that in the not-too-distant future, like the next 12 to 15 years, the average $1,000 laptop is going to be calculating at about 10 to the 16th cycles per second. Now, what that means is that it's going to be calculating as fast as the human brain. A neurophysiologist will tell you that the average human brain calculates at about 10 to 16 cycles per second. The ability for your brain to pattern recognize sound or pattern recognize imagery is at 10 to 16 cycles per second. What's interesting beyond that is that in another 25 years later, the average $1,000 laptop is going to be calculating as fast as the human race. So what happens when you've got that kind of extraordinary power available? Now, what's even more interesting is that kind of capability is being placed on the cloud and is available to anyone on the planet, whether they're in China or Pakistan or India or Africa, wherever it might be. It is literally putting the most precious resource, or what used to be the most precious resource 30 or 40 years ago, in the hands of anyone.
It's just shocking. When you start to look at where this goes, it's hard to even fathom. It's just an exciting time. So, Peter, why did you write this book? Because I asked you because as we talked about earlier, I'm in the middle of, before we started the interview, I'm in the middle of finishing up my book, and I know it's a slog to get it done. So why did you write this book?
Well, I had been watching through the X Prize Foundation and Singularity University incredible things happening. I've watched people solve problems they didn't think they could solve. I've seen Technophilanthropists really set out to change the world. And I've been tracking all the exponentially growing technologies and how they are transforming our world. And I was tired of all this moaning pessimism out there. And I wanted to change the global conversation and change the conversation from one about complaining about problems to solving problems. I also think that, the greatest wealth that is ever to have been created is coming up in this next decade or two. As you think about it, the world's biggest problems, the things that are humanity's grand challenges, water, food, energy, healthcare, education, all of these things are also the world's biggest marketplaces. So we're on the verge of creating a brand new generation of centimillionaires and billionaires for the people who start attacking these problems and solving them.
So, Peter, I have just one more question. You've got this rich educational background, research background, and you've started lots of companies. You've started several major companies that have made a dent on the global scale. I mean, you're doing big things, and you clearly have learned a lot about business. And so a lot of my listeners are very interested in starting businesses. It's all about entrepreneurs here. So what is the most important thing you've learned about starting a new business?
Well, probably the most important thing I've learned is going after an area you're passionate about. You can earn a living in any area, and you can make a huge impact almost in any area, but it's something that you need to live, breathe, and dream, and finding that thing that you want to do at 2 a.m. in the morning when everyone else is giving up, and that drives you and that gives you fulfillment is probably the most important thing. So it's connecting with your personal passion, because you'll do that better than anybody else. So for me, my personal passions had been space. Initially, it still is. Opening up and creating businesses in that world is critical to me. But also, it's solving grand challenges, and I do that through X Prize and Singularity University and this book, Abundance. And so I'm passionate about sharing this message and showing people where they can change the world and do well for themselves and well for the planet. So find the thing you're most passionate about and focus on that. That's lesson number 1, 2, and 3 for me.
Excellent. So, and now, finally, how can people get more information about the book, or how can they get the book?
Sure. So Abundance is going on sale on Feb 21, and it will be available at every bookstore thereafter. But before then, we have a pre-promotion campaign. And if you go to abundancethebook.com, just ABUNDANCETHEBOOK.com, we have like $1,200 worth of gifts that you will get discounts to attend Singularity University, access to our private library of some of the top faculty speaking about exponential technologies, and also a chance to win a $5,000 zero gravity flight and a $12,000 executive program at SU. So really, I want to get as many people talking about abundance as possible on this planet, and I'm counting on folks to help change the meme, change the conversation on the planet. Stop complaining and moaning about issues and say, I'm going to go and fix that, because you can. Never before, and have you had the power to do so much. So abundancethebook.com is the website. Please join us in this conversation. Get the book. Tell your friends. It's an extraordinary life ahead.
Thank you so much. Go to abundancethebook.com and pre-order a copy and get all kinds of extra goodies, $1,200 worth of extra goodies, extra bonus gifts. Peter, this just resonates so much with the message that I try to put out into the world, and especially the idea, when I hear you talk about stuff, so much of it you've bootstrapped. So much of you figured out a way to leverage whatever assets you have. Getting people to spend $100 million in research to win a $10 million prize. That's the very essence of leverage. And, having small groups of individuals get together and just change the world. I mean, that's so intoxicating and invigorating and inspiring. So thank you for all the things you've been doing. Thanks for writing the book. And I've just got the electronic version. I'm going to be buying the full-out version and look forward to digging into that. So I find it easier to highlight the physical version. So
yes,
when I get a book that really inspires me, I end up getting both because I can't wait to get it. So I get the electronic version and then I buy the physical version because I want to have it and highlight it. So.
The campaign is for the physical version right now. The e-books will be going on sale Feb 21. So like I said, get both. Why not? When given a choice, take both.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Peter. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.